Good morning, everyone. Today is March 17th, 2026. Uh, Happy St. Patty's Day to everybody. Uh, I'm calling to order the Wild Turkey Committee meeting. Uh, Before I call on Ms. Minkler for a roll call, this meeting is being streamed live and recorded as a public record. A recording of this meeting will be available at www.ncwildlife.gov. Margot, if you would do the roll call, please.
Good morning. Going to do a roll call for our Wild Turkey Committee members. Committee Chair Steve Wyndham.
Here.
Committee Vice Chair Joe Budd.
Here.
Tommy Fonville.
Here.
Tom Berry. John Alexander. Reed Smith.
Here.
And ex officio members Mark Craig and Landon Zimmer.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Margot. This morning, we're going to have our upland game biologist, Miss Hannah Plumpton, give us an update on the 13th National Wild Turkey Symposium and the new 2026 National Wild Turkey National Turkey Technical Committee. Hannah, if you take us away, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to thank all the committee members for attending on this out of cycle commission meeting. You know, our next committee meetings are scheduled for the first weekend of turkey season, so not the greatest. And we didn't want to wait all the way to June to give you updates on these meetings because they really provide a good foundation for some things coming down the pipeline. So before we kind of go into these committees, I really want to take a quick step back and explain the different meetings I attend to and who's all in them and what we cover, because it provides a good foundation. I don't think we really explain it very well of what we all do. So the first one is our regional working group. So the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, or AFWA, is where all the state agencies are kind of work together, and we're broken up into different regions: the Northeast, the Southeast, the Midwest, and the Western group. And within those, you know, there are several working groups, including the Southeast Wild Turkey Working Group. And that's where all the state biologists in the Southeast get together for an in-person meeting to share updates and discussion. And so all the turkey biologists in the Southeast, and that's from Texas up through Missouri, across Kentucky and the Virginias. Everybody else is kind of in this Southeast. And so in this annual meeting that we have that's over a couple of days, we share state updates, any changes to our regulations, new research that we're conducting, or possibly some updates on that, as well as maybe some preliminary results and challenges we're facing. And this is great for a couple different reasons. Not only do we get to know what our fellow states are doing around us in the region, and we get to share those things, but we're also really forming a connection with these folks. You know, we're having conversations over meals, during our breaks, and in the evenings, and we're really forming a great relationship. So when something comes up here in North Carolina, and I remember during this meeting, oh, you know, another state like Texas was doing something similar, I can reach out to their state biologist and give them a call and ask them to give me more information on what they're doing, or, hey, can you send me slides in your presentation? That was really great. And so a good example of that is a few years ago now, when we started our big turkey ecology research project, we presented that to our fellow state biologists at this meeting, and it got a lot of them thinking and really intrigued a bunch of them. So when they started their own research projects, granted on a smaller scale, not quite that statewide scale. They used our turkey ecology project as a blueprint or just copied and pasted for their own research projects. So that's a great example of that communication relationship we form amongst us turkey biologists. Now, the next collaborative meeting I go to is completely separate from those regional AFWA groups, but it includes all the same people. And that is the NWTF, or the National Wild Turkey Federation's Technical Committee. And this is where state biologists, turkey biologists from all 49 states other than Alaska and 3 Canadian provinces, are represented on this giant technical committee. And as Chairman Wyndham mentioned during our committee meeting, 1 second.
Everybody, please make sure your mics are muted.
You're fine. Thank you, Mallory. So that's, as Commissioner Wyndham mentioned, this NWTF Technical Committee is what I was voted chair of for this coming year by my peers on the board, which represent, again, all 49 states and our 3 Canadian provinces. And this is where we discuss some broader topics that are a little bit more nationwide or international in this case than those regional groups. So our summer turkey survey, it was standardized in this group, the data collection and analysis. So that's one where we always discuss updates and data storage on that one. Research equipment, we're always doing, various people are doing research. So any new technology that somebody's experimenting, the pros and cons of that, as well as troubleshooting some problems. And regulations, of course, is always a big one, especially with new and emerging technology. We're always reaching out to see how other states are approaching these issues and new technology, and if they have any language that they could review. And then another one is, because this is an NWTF technical committee, they are represented on this board as well. I have their new director of science, Dr. Patrick Whiteman, as well as another biologist on it. And we really form a good relationship here because NWTF, their money that they raise or donate, a lot of it goes towards research, and they really want to make sure it goes to research that's most beneficial to the states and the state agency biologists, myself and my coworkers, our counterparts, on how we best manage turkeys. And so the technical committee, full of state biologists, we get to say, hey, these are the research priorities that we deem the most important to help us do our jobs. They'll put out calls with researchers and professors for research grants. And then we get to review those grants and proposals and rank them to what we deem the most beneficial to us to help us do our job. And so NWTF gets to make sure that all their valuable hard-earned dollars that people donate and raise for the wild turkey go and target research that the state biologists deem the most important to help monitor and manage those turkey populations. And the last one isn't quite a collaborative meeting, but it again involves all the same folks of people. And this is our National Wild Turkey Symposia. And this occurs every 5 years. And this is where, state biologists, NGOs, researchers all get together to hear and discuss the latest wild turkey research. And so we just had one in December, and the prior one we had was a couple years delayed in 2022 due to COVID, but North Carolina hosted that one. And so there's been a grand total of 13 total symposia. And I kind of want to take a brief moment to go through the symposia and how the research has really changed through the years. So in the first national symposium occurred in 1959, And that was more of getting all the state biologists in a room so we can all get on the same page. This was at a time where turkey restoration was at its most chaotic. We're trying to figure it out. Are we doing pen reared birds? Are those successful to the trapping and transferring? And it was just to get everyone together and on the same page. So the first 3 symposium really focused on the restoration of wild turkeys and their recovery and growth and increasing their distribution and abundance. It's in the 4th through the 6th symposium, we're starting to see the shift of that research away from that restoration restocking effort. And we're really starting to celebrate our success of successfully restoring wild turkeys across not only their native range, but in areas that had never had them historically. So they were very successful in that regard. The 7th through the 9th one, turkeys were considered restored across the country. We're all doing well. Research is starting to decline a bit because, turkeys are successful, they're restored. There's no need to do a lot of research on them. And what research we do have is very general about wild turkeys. It's around the 2010s that we start to really see a shift. And that's where we first start noticing some states reporting declining populations, and they're starting to have that expression of diversity of troubles and concerns around the wild turkey that we see being reflected and addressed in the last few symposia. So let's talk about the most recent symposium, the 13th National Wild Turkey Symposium, which occurred in December 2025 at Kansas City, Missouri. It was co-hosted by the Kansas Wildlife and Parks and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, so those state agencies co-hosted. National Wild Turkey Federation are a major organizer of this, so they were very heavily involved in this as well. It was 3 days of full-on, nonstop wild turkey science and research. There was 145 attendees, and this was state turkey biologists, other state agency biologists, and WTF biologists, as well as, university professors and their students, all talking, eating, breathing turkey science, over our meals, during our breaks, in the evenings. Not only are we talking with our fellow biologists in this case, but we're also really just talking the hardcore science with the university professors themselves and the researchers. And so of the 30 presentations that were presented over those 3 days, 3 of those presentations were about from the Turkey Ecology Project, sharing our results with people across the country managing it. North Carolina also contributed data to a couple other larger data sets on 2 other projects looking at some regional effects. So it's really exciting to see that 17% of the research that was presented at this presentation, at this symposium, were directly tied back to North Carolina. And so that's exciting that we remain on the cutting edge of science and pushing that barrier to share with researchers and biologists across the country. And that's thanks to senior leadership, as well as yourselves, commissioners, that provide us the support when we say, hey, we really need to do some research to answer these questions to help us better manage turkeys, because without you, we wouldn't be able to do it. And not every state has that same support to do that heavy research. So that's a really great thing to see. And so there were a wide range of topics covered in this symposium, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but North Carolina was able to send a couple staff members to this in addition to myself. And it was really interesting to see that we all kind of gravitated to different subjects and presentations based on our interests. For me, I gravitated to those research presentations that directly impacted my job and did it. One of our staff members is an avid turkey hunter, so he gravitated to the research on hunting and the impacts of that and the effects. We had another staff member who's really into technology, so the new and emerging tools and technology really piqued his interest. And it's awesome that we can have that, and then we're able to come back and share what we learned from this symposium with other staff members who were unfortunately unable to attend. But I do want to focus on a couple of subjects that were just introduced during this symposia. So these were just the beginning, toe in the water of some research that is really going to become prevalent over the next few years and will probably play a massive role in our next symposium when it occurs probably in 2030. And those topics were genetics, disease, and predation management. Now, as the biologist here in North Carolina, that's kind of exciting because we are either conducting or working as a partner on projects dealing with these focuses. You know, our amazing Dr. Heather Evans is working with Dr. Mike Chamberlain out of the University of Georgia by providing a few hundred samples for a big genetics project looking at turkey genetics across the country. So North Carolina will be well represented in that. Disease, we are wrapping up a project with the Southeastern Cooperative Wildlife Disease Study Group, or SCWDS, looking at if there are any indirect effects of pathogens on wild turkey reproduction and survival. And then the predation management, as we mentioned during the February Small Game Committee meeting, Project GAME, or that game bird and mesomammal evaluation, there's been a lot of concern about predation in terms of game birds. So we're working with our fur bear biologist, Caitlin, to try and get some more insight and some answers for people particularly our landowners, when it comes to that predation management aspect of wild turkeys and quail. So that was a lot of information. We had 3 days of nonstop research and new information that it was a little overwhelming by the end. We really just had it thrown at us that we really had trouble processing it. So thankfully, a couple months later, we had a couple months to process this, and then our National Wild Turkey Federation Technical Committee met at NWTF's National Convention in Nashville. They were very kind to have some meeting space set up for us. And we got to spend 3 days in person, again, with turkey biologists across the state, across the country, really sitting there and focusing on the information we learned from the symposium. What did we learn? What do we still have questions on? And what are our next steps moving forward? And so we were able to form a couple subcommittees. Again, there's representatives from across the country, so it's a little unwieldy for all of us. So we had a couple subcommittees formed to have some objectives reached. So we were given some recommendations during the symposium to incorporate into our summer turkey survey analysis. So we have a small group evaluating those and whether to incorporate them or not. Another thing we have is in each symposium, there's a state of the turkey paper, and the metrics that are used to express the state of the turkey are a little outdated. They're more beneficial during the restoration time period, but they're not the most helpful in today's day and time. So we're discussing what new metrics to include there to represent that, to help us state biologists and others. And lastly, we have a group looking at ranking and our research priorities on a national scale, as well as sharing the results on a national scale. We do a really good job of that in our different regional groups, but we don't really do a good job on the national scale. So results out of the Northeast are a lot harder. I don't really hear those results, and they don't hear results that we get in the Southeast. So we're really working on improving communication and always moving forward. So it's an exciting time period for me leading this group, and I look forward to the next steps moving forward. So that was just a very brief kind of overview of what we've occurred in the National Symposium as well as this tech committee meeting, and it does form a good base on stuff coming down the pipeline. So thank you very much, commissioners. Chairman Wyndham, I turn it over to you. Wait, who's muted? Can I? Can they unmute themselves?
Does anybody have any questions for Hannah? Hannah, thank you for bringing us up to speed on all the hard work you have been doing. Again, do any of the commissioners or any of the committee have any questions for Miss Hannah? Hannah, I've got a question.
Certainly.
You mentioned genetics.
Yes.
I've been talking to some folks across the United States, and one of the topics that's starting to come up more and more is the hybridization of the subspecies. Is that what you're going to be doing with genetics? A lot of it, I think, goes back, or some of the folks thinks it goes back to when we were doing the restoration. That you got easterns in the Osceola range. You've got Merriam's in the Rio range and the eastern range. For the, I guess, for the trueness of the subspecies. We're seeing a lot of tail feathers that don't, that might have more white than they do brown in the eastern. Where are we going with the genetics on this thing?
So that's one of the things that is being looked at. From what I was talking with Dr. Chamberlain, some of the early looks like all the subspecies are shaking out genetically where they're supposed to be, very distinctive. Another thing we're looking at is just how related everybody is in that regard. You know, the inbreeding scale, since we did move all the birds, how genetically distinct are they from everybody? And a whole lot of other genetic change that I really don't understand. And I have to get Dr. Evans in a room so she can use small words to explain it to me. But there's a lot being touched in there, maternity lines are being evaluated, as well as parents and how related they are, as well as those subspecies. So there's a wide range of topics that they're focusing on and exploring, and the subspecies are just one of the things that they're considering.
Hannah, one more question on my end. In the genetics end of it, I've heard from some folks further south that in their mind, there's not enough, let's see how I put, the resident populations are inbreeding to the extent that it might be affecting the overall population of the birds in certain regions. Is there any credulence to that? Is it being looked at?
That is one of the main questions that we are kind of looking at. That genetic thing is that a possible issue in causing that lower reproduction and possibly this decline? Is that genetic inbreeding? Are they being inbred? Are they being isolated in some areas? So that's a big portion of that genetics research that we're looking at as well.
And along that same line, that goes back to expanding habitat, so you have different core groups so they can traverse and breed and change the genetic stock. Am I out on a limb?
No, you're correct. So that's one of the big importance of having that habitat, is to allow that connectivity between all the populations, to allow that good gene flow so they aren't being inbred. It's when we start isolating pockets and they're cut off from everybody else, they start inbreeding, where it could cause some massive issues.
Has that ever been regulated to heavily populated game lands? So you have an isolated game land that's very strictly controlled with a good turkey population, but you have a surrounding area with very little turkey population. What's the criteria that y'all are looking at?
So that's a good question. Right now, we're just kind of starting this and figuring out where we are in the genetics world, because this is the beginning of genetics in turkeys. So we're trying to just see what the genetic structure is. And so we're providing them samples from every county across the state. I think Heather's working on sending them 200 samples. So that's at least 2 samples for every county. And so we're trying to see how that's looking across the state, what the variation is, and then comparatively. And then it could start opening those questions of, hey, there are some very unique genetic differences, and it could lead to some more questions moving forward. We just don't know where we're going to go. So we need that first level of what is the genetic turkey structure looking like across North Carolina before we start diving into those little nuanced questions.
Anna, excellent. Thank you again very, very much. Vice Chairman Bud, anything on your side, sir?
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman, this is John
Yes, sir.
Alexander. Question. Is there such a thing as buying birds from other areas to bring into your population and say, I've got a farm in Granville County and I've got some birds up there, but it might be nice if possible to be able to either to buy or transfer birds from elsewhere to come in and mix them to have a better population and a more diverse. Is that a possibility at all?
It is technically illegal to own any wild turkeys.
Okay.
So to bring in population like that is illegal here in North Carolina. It's one of the things that, again, we can't really expand upon until we really get an idea of what the genetic population is before we start talking what ifs and considerations down the road.
Okay. And by here, I was here for roll call, but I was muted somehow or another. But thank you very much for the terrific presentation.
Hannah, this is Commissioner Fondle. Could you somewhat remind me and refresh my memory about how and why we made the decision to cut the youth season back from 7 days to 2 days?
Certainly. So we decided to reduce the youth season from 7 to 2 because we wanted to standardize youth days across all our different seasons. So that includes our deer seasons, waterfowl seasons, trout seasons, as well as we focused on the weekend because the vast majority of the harvest, over 60% of the harvest that occurs during the youth season occurs during the weekends. Another thing was because spring break changes year to year, and between school district to school district, it wasn't consistent across the state. So it was kind of luck of the draw if somebody could be available to hunt during the week. So we really just wanted to standardize it and then maximize everybody's opportunity to hunt turkeys during the youth season. And with it becoming more and more popular, the harvest during the youth season was not an insignificant amount, especially as it occurs prior to when turkeys lay their first egg. So we're trying to minimize the disruption prior to breeding as well.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
You did a good job on your report too. And we're very thankful, Hannah, that we have someone like you paying as close attention to something that's so valuable to each of us in the state. So thank you again for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Gentlemen and ladies, are there any other questions from the committee or attending commission members? Okay, hearing none, I will call this meeting to close. And again, Hannah, thank you very much. Committee members, thank y'all for attending, and any other commissioners that were on board. Most appreciated. Have a wonderful day and a great St. Patty's Day, and look forward to seeing you soon. And most of all, good luck during turkey season. See you soon. Bye now.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Steve.